Chapter 8. I was not expecting that. The movies and TV lied to me. The very first time I went into an operating theatre while working as a diagnostic radiographer in the NHS, I was shocked. In every TV show or film I had watched, whenever a scene involved a character needing surgery, the operating theatre was always shown as being a very serious, quiet place. The only person who ever spoke was the surgeon who was carrying out the operation. The only noises heard were the quiet beeping, humming and whirring of the anaesthetist's equipment as it kept the patient breathing artificially. You can imagine my surprise when I discovered that an operating theatre was actually a very different environment to the one I had seen on screen. As I trundled the C-arm of the portable imaging equipment into the theatre, I was greeted by the noise of a radio playing and the relaxed chatter of the theatre staff as they made sure everything was prepared, in place and ready before the patient arrived from the ward. As I plugged in the cable connecting the C-arm and the monitor to one another, I chatted with the staff about what they'd been up to at the weekend and about how their kids were getting on at school. Now, of course, once the surgery began, the atmosphere was always professional. The surgeon was focused on their work, the theatre nurse was focused on the surgeon, the anaesthetist was focused on the patient, and I was focused on getting the best imaging possible whenever it was needed by the surgeon. But even though the way the surgeon and nurse scrubbed up before the surgery, and the way they were helped into their surgical gowns by other staff, was like the process shown on TV, the actual working environment during the surgery was very different to what many would assume it to be. If you had been allowed to walk past the operating theatre and peek through the small circular window, you would have seen what you would have expected to see. From a distance and at a quick glance, it would have looked remarkably like the scenes shown on TV. But what you would have seen was an incomplete picture. During the years I worked as a radiographer, I spent a lot of time in operating theatres wearing surgical scrubs, a surgical cap and surgical mask. I saw surgeons' egos get the better of them as they exploded at nursing staff who weren't as quick at delivering the right surgical tools as a surgeon wanted them to be. As an aside, I always found orthopaedic surgeons to be the most likely to get frustrated or angry, while the urological surgeons were always the most relaxed and down-to-earth. I saw the strain in the eyes of the surgeon as they battled to fix shattered bones together as precisely as possible. I shared the exhaustion of the theatre staff as we all stood in the operating theatre at 3 a.m. following an emergency operation for a patient who had been involved in a road traffic accident late at night. I remember muttering with the other theatre staff at 1 p.m. on Christmas Day when we'd all been called in for an emergency operation that turned out to be anything but urgent. The experience I gained during that time makes me smile every time I now see a surgery scene in a TV episode or in a movie. While there is sometimes a bit of similarity to the real thing, there is an awful lot that is nowhere near the reality. A peek below the surface. It can be the same in business. Whatever industry you are in, you may have gone into it with certain expectations of how things were done, how decisions were made, and how profit was generated. Now, while your assumptions and expectations may have been correct, it is more likely that they only reflected a small percentage of what really goes on in your business. Similarly, if you look at a successful business person, this is usually one who is idolised by the media and younger marketers on social media, your perception may be very different if it is only a surface level look versus a deep dive below the surface. When you take a deep dive into any business or industry, or you look below the surface of any hugely successful business person, you will often see something very different to what is visible on the surface. Very often, you will discover that the things you thought were the priorities, the essential things, aren't really that important or essential. What you thought was the secret of their success may turn out to be anything but. When I was training as a diagnostic radiographer, a large part of the degree was focused on learning about the physics of X-rays and how radiography equipment worked. A lot of time was also spent on learning about human anatomy and physiology. For my job, it was of course important to know what the different bones in the body were. That information was necessary for the job. But physics? Did I really need that knowledge on a day-to-day basis while actually doing the job? When I walked into the accident and emergency crash room to take x-rays of an unconscious, badly injured patient, did the rest of the medical team call me in because of my knowledge about physics? Did they rely on me because I could explain how the x-ray film was going to be developed from x-ray cassette, I'm old, it's all produced digitally now, to final image on the film? No. The most important part of the job was that I could provide them with the best possible image so that an accurate diagnosis could be made. That was the priority. Now, of course, there are certain legal requirements for qualifying and being able to work as a diagnostic radiographer in the United Kingdom. Similar legal requirements exist for many other jobs, such as solicitors, police officers, pharmacists, nurses, physiotherapists, and occupational therapists. There are certain things you are obligated to learn about and to know. Many jobs also have ongoing personal development as a requirement of their work. This is all, of course, as it should be. But, and this is my big but, many of the things you learn as part of your job aren't needed each and every day. They are not an essential part of your daily work. To be slightly controversial, I managed to make it this far without being controversial, a lot of marketing theory that is taught nowadays and taken as absolute truth is not necessarily correct. While it may read well on paper and might even allow you to tick a box on a random form to show compliance of learning objectives, when used in the real world it will often fail, and fail miserably. As has been said, no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy. Despite the above tirade, please know that I am not anti-theory. Instead, I am anti-useless. Frameworks over systems. I'm a big proponent of frameworks over systems. A system tends to be more rigid, fixed, inflexible. Yes or no, left or right. There's often very little nuance. A framework is malleable, flexible, liberating, yet still able to provide structure and strength. How does this apply to marketing? As a marketer, there are certain things it is helpful to know, things like what makes a good headline, the words that help to persuade and influence, how to design a print ad to heighten its effectiveness, how to structure a sales letter or website sales page to increase its effectiveness. I would argue that it is far more valuable to have an understanding of human psychology, particularly the psychology of change, a deep understanding of buy-in patterns and behaviours, successful experience of direct, i.e. face-to-face selling, an understanding of your industry, your business and your customers. These are things that cannot be learned just from books. They can't be understood and implemented only by theoretical analysis or logic. These things can all be useful and there is a time and a place for them. I am not telling you to throw logic or analysis out of the window. I am telling you that to be a healthy marketer, you need to roll your sleeves up, put your boots on the ground, walk into the operating theatre and get some down and dirty experience in the real world. There is no shortcut to real world experience. In so many aspects of life, especially for marketing, you can read all the books you want. I am fully aware of the irony of including that last sentence in a marketing book. I am not saying don't read books. Books are a huge part of my life. I believe firmly in what Zig Ziglar said many years ago. Poor people have large TVs, rich people have large libraries. I live by that quote. I have many books in my house. My wife and I both love reading. You can learn a lot from books. But the power of reading a business book is in applying and implementing the theory you have learned in your actual job. This is how you discover what really works. This is where the marketing magic happens. At the very beginning of this chapter, I explained how different operating theatres are in hospitals compared to how they are portrayed in TV shows and movies. And so it is with marketing. Sometimes your marketing reality will be very different to what you may have imagined after reading a marketing or copywriting book. It will often be very different to what you see your competitors doing. When you experience this alternate reality, you need to adjust your expectations, change your approach, and then just get on with it. You need to walk into the metaphorical operating theatre of your business and get the job done.